Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Inspiring Thoughts podcast. We're very lucky this week to have Jayne Robinson with us. And Jayne's an RTT therapist stroke practitioner. She's a trauma-informed coach and also a narcissist abuse specialist. So, Jayne, great to have you on board today.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, very welcome. And now, Jayne, people are going to ask me straight away, where is your lovely accent from?
I'm from Australia. I live just outside of Melbourne, Victoria, Australia.
Oh, wonderful. So I think it's early in the morning for me and it's late in the afternoon for you at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, it's late in the afternoon for me.
Wonderful. So Jayne, thank you ever so much. So Jayne's had questions in advance today, so to do some preparation for kind of our podcast. So Jayne, before we get into the questions, would you mind just telling our listeners just about your brief career history?
Yes, certainly. So as you said, I do RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapy. I'm a trauma-informed coach specialising in narcissistic abuse recovery. I'm also doing brain spotting, which I've been really excited to get involved with. But prior to that, I've had sort of a little bit of an up and down career in as far as the healing arts go. I started in kinesiology in the early 80s and then didn't do that for a while, having children and all that sort of stuff, and had other jobs. But then once I left my sort of corporate career, I got back into the kinesiology. I also did Touch for Health instruction, teaching people how to do basic kinesiology. And then I did Bowen therapy, which is another sort of form of muscle therapy, an Australian developed thing from many years ago. And did, what else did I do? Theta healing and, all different sort of things, sort of moving into, all different sort of modalities. And then that all went by the by. And then after I came out of a narcissistic marriage several years ago, found that I wanted to find some way to help myself. And it was during COVID. So everything was in lockdown and it was very difficult to get any form of help or support. So it was basically, I decided, well, if I'm going to spend time and money on getting help, let's do it from a learning perspective. So that was when I decided to do the rapid transformational therapy. So I did that with Marissa Peer online. And that's been an amazing journey for me because it's opened up so many other things, as I say, the trauma-informed coaching, narcissistic abuse specialist, and also the brain spotting. So it's sort of been one of those beautiful things that it's just created more and more momentum for me to learn more and understand. And so now I just have a very small practice at home. I run my business from home and working with people for all different sorts of things. And the beauty now is that I can incorporate the RTT, the trauma-informed coaching, the narcissistic abuse specialist, and the brain spotting, and you can sort of just incorporate all of that, which is really wonderful. Just sort of, depending on where people are at, and what they're needing, so you can make it more bespoke. That's the key.
And I remember when we spoke before, I think a good month or so ago, around, and I can still pick up on your passion now to really kind of help from that mind and body perspective, to help people move forward. And that really touched me before, was about going from the present to the future rather than staying in the past. I think that was really important for me when we spoke.
Yes. And the thing is that with rapid transformational therapy, it's a form of hypnotherapy. It's something that Marissa developed, hypnotherapy, but there's certain processes that the rapid transformational therapy goes through that brings people back to where the root cause is. And so often what happens with us, whether it's in our work life, in our personal life, whether that be intimate relationships, family, work colleagues, all that sort of thing, that a lot of those triggers and stuff will be coming from an experience in childhood or somewhere that we haven't actually really understood, or that we're consciously aware of, because it's quite deep, deep within our consciousness. So we're being triggered and we're reacting rather than responding, and we don't really understand why, or why we attract certain things too, because, and it's all to do with our self-worth and, how we've been brought up, lots of different variants, but it really is more with the rapid transformational therapy. It gives people an opportunity to sort of relax and go into, and often people will, once they've had, the hypnotherapy, it's not like you see in Hollywood and, turning people into dogs and frogs and all that sort of thing. It's really just a relaxation of the nervous system. And so allowing that bypassing of the conscious into the subconscious, and people come and go, wow, I've never thought about that again, or I'd forgotten about that, or, whatever. So, it really is a beautiful way for people to sort of really understand why they're having these issues, whether it's a phobia or relationship difficulties or whatever. It sort of gives them that opportunity to say, oh, okay, and this is how the brain functions, and it's actually not my fault. My brain's just here to try and protect me from these things. So it's working to help us, but it doesn't always do the best for us, if that makes sense, for us to be able to deal with everyday life.
Yeah, and I think like before, Jayne, when you and I spoke, we can go into conversations and go on more and more, which I love, absolutely love. So one of the first questions I had was, what does RTT stand for? So you've already said kind of rapid transformational therapy, about hypnosis, those kind of things. Is there anything else on there that what RTT is about, or what's it mean?
Look, I think the rapid transformational therapy, it's named that because it is a rapid transformation, as opposed to a lot of other maybe hypnotherapies or other therapies. It does give people that transformation that they're looking for, because people don't want to spend months, sitting and talking, or, and all that sort of stuff. So I think, it's actually named because it is a transformation that can happen very rapidly.
Yeah. It does what it says on the tin, doesn't it?
It does.
And I think that's the other bit. When I've come across people that have experienced trauma, they want to move forward at their pace, but a quicker move forward, rather than months and years staying in that kind of that place. They want to move out from it, but they just don't know how to.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and we're always looking for that opportunity to find something that's going to give us that light at the end of the tunnel. We know we don't like where we are, but we need something that's going to actually help us to move forward. And once we sort of take that responsibility to do that, and to move into something that is going to help us, and it is going to help us look at things differently or accept things as they are, then, this is where this sort of therapy helps.
And when would a colleague or a client use RTT? When would they? What would be the ideal thing for them to use it for?
Oh, look, there's so many things. I mean, it's one of those things that you can sort of really probably address many issues that people will come up with. So phobias are a good one. People who have phobias of spiders or flying, heights, those sorts of things, public speaking, that sort of thing. You can really sort of help people sort of find that part of them within themselves that can accept, what's going on. Sleeping problems, habits, just self-confidence, and, a lot of that, relationships, all those sorts of things, pretty much anything that, and often, trauma from, childhood experiences, or, someone might have had a workplace accident or a car accident or something like that. It can certainly help with that, to help sort of alleviate that, post-traumatic stress, and, I probably use other tools as well for PTSD or complex PTSD, but But the beauty of the RTT is it gets people into a state where they're feeling better about themselves, and so that anything else that I might bring in to help them if they're needing more than just one session, then we've sort of set that foundation for that healing to take place.
Because I remember you speaking to me before about phobias. So I've got phobia of snakes, so I'll be not very good in Australia from that point of view. But I think you shared with me with a client before that had a phobia about spiders in the room.
Yes.
Would you mind?
Yes.
Is that okay to share? Well, I know we won't use client names or anything like that, but would you mind
Yes,
just sharing, because that fascinated me before, about how you can really help people?
Yes. So I had this call from this woman, and she left I didn't answer the phone at the time. I was busy, and next thing I've got this message of her absolutely beside herself, saying, can you call me? Can you call me? So I rang her back, and she'd gone out to her car, and there was a big huntsman spider. They're about this big, and she has had a phobia, and this woman would be in her 30s, and ever since she's left home, her phobia was so bad that she spent her whole life with a spray either in her bag or with her. So she would go from the kitchen to the bathroom with her can of spray in case she encountered a spider. And that wouldn't matter what size that spider was. It could be the tiniest little spider, but she'd freak out. So she'd go to bed and it'd be in her bed with her. She was totally paranoid. So, she had a really serious spider phobia. So anyway, so I said to her, oh, look, okay, I can do it over. I said, you can come up to me. And she goes, oh, no, I can't drive my car because I can't get back in my car. So anyway, so she calmed down. I gave her some breathing exercises to do. And anyway, as a result, we did a Zoom call the next morning and did that. And she goes, oh, am I going to have to think about spiders? And I go, well, yes, you are. But I said, you're going to be fine and whatever. Anyway, we went right back, took her right back to a childhood situation where she was in a cot and there was a spider in the cot and she was crying out to her parents and they just thought that she was mucking up, right? She was only 6 or 8 months old, she thinks. That was sort of what we sort of came up with. And anyhow, so that was her original encounter that freaked her out. And so, but of course, she doesn't remember that. But, subconscious, and she could, but how she describes what was going on, that sort of ascertained what age she was. So anyway, so that was all fine. We did all that. She said that she felt really good after the session and that was good. And anyway, the next day, she sends me a text and she says, oh, I opened my blind this morning and there was a small spider on the window. And I just got my spray and I sprayed it and she said, and I just went, oh, okay. She said, whereas normally I'd be like freaking out, grabbing the spray, carrying on. And I said, oh, that's great. And I said, I'm so proud of you. You're doing this. And I've had the best sleep I've had since I can't remember when. And I said, that's fantastic. So anyway, so then I got a message from her about 2.5, 3 weeks later. And she had gone to stay with a friend and there was a big huntsman in the bedroom where she was sleeping up in the corner of the room. And she woke up and saw it there and she went, oh, okay, so you're up there. Okay, well, you obviously haven't bothered me or not, so you're not going to bother me now. And she said, and I just got up, went and had a shower, came back in, got dressed in the room and just went, bye, spider, and went home. So she's had no more of that response. Now, this is a girl who used to take this spray in her handbag. So if she went out for dinner, even she went to a restaurant or they were sitting outside or to a barbecue, she'd take it because she would be paranoid that there'd be a spider on the table, under the chair, whatever. So, it really, really helped her. So she was absolutely thrilled. So, and that was just one session, one session. So, it's not always that miraculous. I always say to people, let's just have one session and see how you go. But, and sometimes people need more than one, but in this instance, it was just the one. So it's changed her life.
Yeah. But it's also like that debilitating, isn't it, for her?
Oh, it is. Absolutely. Her heart's racing, blood pressure's going up. She's sweating. She's out of control, can't think, can't, and you can't live your life like that. Well, not properly.
Yes. Yeah. And because I enjoyed when we spoke to me before about that story, and it just resonates, I think, for our listeners as well, to show what can be done or to help people. And what would you say are the other benefits of RTT, Jayne? What would you say are the other benefits for people or colleagues to experience it?
Look, I think everybody will have, something that they want to work with, and it could be self-confidence, it could be, I don't know, time management. It depends on what people's work is, how they're feeling, but it really is about coming back into your own self-worth, your own self-empowerment, and finding, people know what's restricting them from them being successful in whatever they're wanting to be successful at. So, that could be successful in getting over a phobia, but that could be successful as being in a workplace situation, or as a parent, or as a partner, or as a sibling, whatever that is. And so we've all got, things that we think, I'd just like to be better at that, or not have an issue around that, or feel more confident about that, people, kids going for their driver's license, that sort of thing, people going for exams, tests, that sort of thing. It can really help them to focus and calm their nervous system down, and give them a different self-talk, but also release anything that somewhere in their past has created a doubt, a lack of self-confidence, or a lack of self-empowerment in that area. So it's pretty broad, with what you can work with.
Yeah, and I think that's the bit for me is about opening up about the RTT, was how broad it can be. It's not just one position, let's say work, etc. And the reason why I wanted to talk about the phobia story is how broad it can help people through trauma, and actually going back to their childhoods to really unravel those kind of things, and actually give that person accountability to gain an empowerment that they can own, rather than being an external factor being done to.
Yes, and the thing is, and part of the RTT process, which is pretty important, is actually when we go back into where that childhood situation may have been the cause for, something even small or great, whatever, is that we actually allow the body and the brain and the body to work together, and to then understand that we're not that 5-year-old, we're not that 9-year-old. Because what we find is, and it's like this woman with the phobia, she's reacting as a 6 or 8 month old baby, screaming her head off, right? Now she knows that spider's not going to kill her, or it's not going to hurt her, but you see her logic in being able to see that. But it doesn't matter, because the emotion that's so tied up in that is so real that she's responding as that 8-month-old baby, if that makes sense. So when we encounter anything, whether it's in work life, our personal life, whatever, when we're doing that, we're really responding to where the original, that original root root started. And but it can also be fantastic for pain management. People who have injury or pain, or after surgery, or from accidents, or that sort of thing, it can be really marvelous for that, really helping them to work through that and to manage that pain, because somewhere in them there's probably been something in the past or during that actual trauma of the accident that has created that pain. And we take on so much of what other people say, right? Oh my God, you're going to be in agony for years, or whatever. And so we take them and think, is this ever going to leave me? So we can actually retrain how we deal with pain, and we can change that as well. So that's a really cool one to do as well.
And it's what other positive effects would you start to see from, or positive behaviour from, colleagues that have gone through rapid transformational therapy? What would you see in their behaviour of that?
Look, I think that they learn to, they'll have more self-confidence, more
Good.
self-esteem. They'll improve their relationships. They'll improve their communication because it's coming from a much different and a much better part of themselves that's always been there, but they haven't necessarily been able to express or felt the confidence or whatever. So yeah, that's self-esteem, self-worth, all of that sort of thing. It just sort of gives them a little bit more connection with who they are and with the people around them. So that allows them then to communicate effectively with them also.
Yeah, because I think I love the way that you put there about communication, around self-esteem, those kind of parts that would help in everyday life. Because a lot of people, even in my world of mediation and conflict resolution, people go, "Oh, it's nice and hairy fairy, Steve, and it's all lovey-dovey and all this kind of." It's not. There's a meaning there to help people progress forward, to be better at their jobs, be more self-confident. You know, those kind of things. That's the purpose of being there.
Yes.
And it's not just let's all go out and hug a tree, is it? If it makes sense.
No, it's not. And and we can be told by as many people around us how wonderful we are or how great we are and whatever else. But if we don't know it ourselves, then it's not worth much, right? And so, and that's all very lovely, but it really needs to come from within us. And if we can, find a way to really start to appreciate what our skills, what our value is, and appreciate who we are for what we are, then, we then create a much better environment around us. And then I guess the nice things that people compliment us with, then mean something. And it's not just, that cynicism of, what do you want? Or you probably do, saying that to make me feel better, but you sort of have that and to have that confidence. And then, if you are in situations where you're not getting that or you're not getting that support, that you've still got that ability to know your worth.
Yes.
And know who you are and go, well, you know what, that might be your opinion, but I have a different opinion, and to not get upset or miffed by that.
Yeah, and I think that's the the bit about coping with it. I still see people that listen to opinions and get very angry about opinions, or kind of, whereas actually that's what humans are about. We have opinions, we have views, but we may not take it or accept it, but it's how we deal with those. And goes, I really appreciate your opinion, may not be my view, but let's move on from it. We don't have to always argue, defend and attack, do we?
No, we don't. And and I guess, for you in conflict resolution, conflict can be a good thing.
Yes.
If it's managed, in a way that you are accepting of other people's opinions and other people's views. It might not be yours, but have that respect that that's where they're coming from, and this is where you're coming from, and that may be very different, but it is what it is. But it doesn't mean we have to put the boxing gloves on or anything further than that, really.
No, spot on. And where else can colleagues get help and support for RTT? So how can people contact you, Jayne, or how can people get support for that?
Yeah, well, I have a website, and which is jaynerobinson.com.au, and I but RTT, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I've got that sort of thing, but I and the beauty is that you can do it anywhere, because I can do it over Zoom. So it doesn't mean that people have to physically come to me. And one of the things that I will mention with the RTT that that's quite different to other hypnotherapies is that through the session, and so people fill out an intake form, right, and they give me all their history and all that sort of stuff of what they're wanting to work with, and we go back, And then as part of that, at the end of the session, I then do a recording for them, which they listen to each night for at least a minimum of 21 days, because that's what retrains the brain and the self-talk into the positive. And that's one of the beauties of the RTT, and that's why, and it just keeps on keeping that new train of thought going. And then if you fall asleep, it doesn't matter because your subconscious is still listening.
Yeah. Excuse me. And that's the bit about, I was just going to say, what other process would people go through? But they have a good intake form, then the work you do with them, and then they've also got the recordings afterwards to listen to help that 21 days, that neuro pathway, to really help embed.
So that changes the belief system. And part of the intake form is getting as much information as I can, but it's also the wording, because when people fill out an intake form, they're using their own language. So if people are using their own language, that's how they speak to themselves, right?
Yeah.
So the beauty of this is, you make it very, as I say, everyone's bespoke. And so as a part of that, I'm using their language. So that's what they would be, that's how they would be talking to themselves. And that becomes the key as far as I'm concerned. It's not just a rote, you are enough and blah, blah, blah. It's very much right into exactly what they've put on their intake form, what outcome they're wanting, what results they're wanting to have. And if you're using their language, then their brain is actually going to take that in a lot easier than if I'm using words that they wouldn't normally use or talk to themselves with.
Yeah, and that's excuse me, in the same line of work as me, that recently I had a mediation with two colleagues, and the language was not the language I would use, but they could relate to. So I had to adapt my style so that they could, understand what we were talking about. It could land with them. Whereas if I'd have come across as what I call Queen's English, nobody would have understood it. Even I would have looked staged and non-genuine. So I just think I really love that. I think it's very clever to connect with the colleagues in their language, that they can hear those words. Their neural pathways connect, rather than I've got no idea what Jayne's talking about here, and it doesn't make sense. I think that's very clever. Yeah, really good.
Yeah, so it's time consuming. But having said that, that's in my point of view, that's what really brings the results, because you're really connecting with that person. And people will often say, we'll all say that the way we talk to ourselves, if we had a friend that spoke to us like that, they wouldn't be our friend for very long. So we've got to change that self-talk, but we need to do it in a language that we understand.
And I think that's the bit you're going to be leaving me with today, is that we wouldn't have a friend that would speak to us like this, but we seem to put up with how we talk to ourselves like it.
Yeah,
really good.
Always hard on ourselves.
Yeah. And being nosy, our listeners always ask me what kind of our self-development our colleagues are working on, or so what I know you've done some stuff already. You've just really travelled back to England, but what's your personal development for 2023, Jayne?
Look, I think it's just, for me, it's really more about learning how I can use my skills, my tools, learn more, so that I can develop more skills, more tools, and more abilities to be able to make what I do for people even better and more transformative. And of course, and at the end of the day, Stephen, while I'm doing that, that does that for me as well, right? So it's a win-win.
Yeah. So can I just say a big thank you today, Jayne, for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. And I know you and I could talk for hours, and when we met before, I know this is a subject I find fascinating. But I'm leaving on today about, and this is the bit that I found so engaging with yourself, about positive, moving forward, how you're tailoring it to your clients, and the positive impact is about that self-confidence, self-esteem, and we've all been affected through trauma in one way, shape in our lives. So it's not a taboo subject. It's something that actually, to a specialist like yourself, to help get it out and to move forward. And the difference is phenomenal, isn't it? Absolutely phenomenal what people can achieve.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And and I think that a lot of people, even coming out of the COVID situation with the lockdowns and the changing, how we worked, how our family, schooling, kids, whatever, I think, there's still a lot of trauma involved in that, and people sort of trying to get back to being social again, to being interactive, communicating, because it really was, it wasn't just something that happened to one place, it happened worldwide, and I think that, there's a lot of work to be done with that, and it might only seem small, but it has had a massive, massive impact on how people are communicating and living their life or not.
Yes. Yeah. No, spot on. So can I just say, Jayne, a massive thank you today. Really, really appreciate you joining. And I know our paths will cross again in the future, so I really appreciate it. So, Jayne, just enjoy the rest of your day. But thank you so much for joining our Inspiring Thoughts podcast. And I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you.